waving your hands or shouting at it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, okay. Things to be relayed to the tenant. Is there a way to modify that 20-minute window?
It could be increased up to 30 minutes by code.
Okay.
The other options are, actually, leaving a gap at the top of the partition, shortening the partition, so that the ultrasonics can actually see the ultrasonic reflectivity of that volume of space, or adding sensors in the individual compartments.
Okay.
That's probably the least disruptive to, requires the least amount of change.
Yes.
If we would add in like one sensor, if we didn't have the between walls go full height and have the front of the area full height, so one in like the back L area, would that be sufficient for?
Yes.
So
You
just
can
adding
basically
one.
put it over, basically over the partial partition so that it has,
Okay.
it has sensitivity.
So that
to
would
both
be an
sides.
option
Nice.
too if we're.
Okay.
And the other thing about the restrooms that may cause someone to ask a question is there is a switch inside to turn the lights on, though they're automatic on by the occupancy sensor. The switch will only turn the lights on, it will not turn them off. And that's something that we do because if you manually turn them off with the switch, the room remains in a manual on condition until it's been empty for 20 minutes. Because that sensor has to time out to reset to automatic on. So we make the switches on only so that there's never a case where someone's turned the lights off, but they won't come on automatically when you walk in the door. And again, that's true on all 8 restrooms, 2 on each end of the floor, on both floors.
And that timer's controlled where? At the switch in the door, inside the room?
In the sensor itself.
In the sensor on the ceiling?
Yes.
Okay.
There isn't one included in the bill of materials for this project, but there is actually a little handheld tool that can be used, a little infrared transmitter you can use to adjust sensor sensitivity and timeout.
What is it, like just on the sensor you can?
There's actually, if you pop the walk over here where there is a sensor. Who is the tallest among us? You want
Probably me.
Okay, have you got a ladder handy? If we pop the cover off, there's actually a little LCD screen behind there and a couple of buttons, and you can adjust. Just the little side here unclips. Just pull down on that tab. There you go.
No ladder needed.
Just need the guy with the longest arms. So the little black dots around that screen, you can actually go in and manipulate all the settings through there without the tool. You just need a little step stool or ladder to access it.
So there's no lighting control front end?
Not for the restrooms. Not for the restrooms. All of the current sort of unfinished space area is on a master system, which I'll show you here in this electrical room. In that system, again, we're only controlling 6 circuits currently. That's basically the common space on level 5, level 6, level 7. That's 3 of our circuits. Then the chandelier here in the stairwell is its own circuit. The exterior lighting at the entrances is an additional circuit, and then there's a allocated circuit for future exterior signage. The front end is a web browser that is not currently connected to any building network right now. I just have my laptop plugged into it so I can show you that feature. That's how you go in and adjust any schedule changes that need to be made. Though I imagine as this space gets leased out and there's further TI work done, all of that's going to be subject to change and further addition and development for the individual spaces. The current sequence of operation is 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. weekdays. All of the lighting that you see on right now is on and remains on. Outside of those hours, it's controlled by occupancy sensors. There are no override switches in the space currently. It is strictly sensor controlled after hours. We're using a dual tech sensor that is both PIR, infrared, and ultrasonic. The blue LED that you see blinking indicates ultrasonic detection, and the red is the PIR infrared detection. It needs to see activity of both types to declare the space occupied. And once the space is in an occupied state, either activity will keep the space in an occupied state. These sensors are set for a 30-minute timeout, simply because we can't cover the entirety of the space. So they'll be located in places where you'd be coming out of the interior core or stairwells and out into the empty space. You'll find a sensor basically right outside the stairwell. And we can here outside where the lobby enters into this space. Similarly on the other side. And the occupancy sensors trigger just the floor that they're on. So where the time clock sweeps all levels 5, 6, and 7 on, the occupancy sensors only trigger the floor on which they're located. So the electrical room here is a little small, but the people who'd like to see the web interface or who might be doing any schedule adjustments, I'd be happy to show you that, or we can take turns and cycle some groups in and out.
Is that where you control the dimming options for the entry?
There is no dimming in the system currently.
Okay.
There is dimming out there. The dimming is actually those photocells in the lobby.
Within the fixtures themselves?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the system not themselves. It's a dimming zone, so there's photocells right here in 2 different zones
Okay.
for the dimming.
Okay.
And the same thing, there's a remote control that I'll pass on to Turner to adjust dimming for whatever you want, and a little note on how to do it. You just stand there, you hit a button and dim it for a moment until you get the level that you want. And
Okay. Yeah, because that's become a more immediate concern. Is
Yeah.
that still working? You're still working through that?
So we just, I sent a message to Chris about having some help with this because the neighbors have been complaining about the lights being too bright in the evening.
We told them to leave the city, but
the lights being too bright in the evening.
yeah, across the street, yeah. So-
Well, in the evening, they're gonna be full brilliance. I mean, that's kind of the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
The dimming is for daylight zones. I mean, like,
Daylight harvesting right now,
Yeah.
is why they dim?
yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Daylight
okay.
harvesting is when they dim. That's the way it's set up.
Okay.
You probably can use that controller to dim the lights if you want.
Okay.
You know, I'm not exactly sure. Right now, it's just daylight harvesting, like you said.
Okay. So we'll have to dig into that a little bit and see if we can.
That remote
do that.
control may be able to dim
Okay.
to what you want, or until it's.
Or at the front end, can you just set them to only be 60%?
Yeah, we could probably do that too.
Okay.
There is a night, there's a little button on it, it's down in my truck currently, there's a night setting, and you can hit it night setting and then get them whatever you want, and they should stay there.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll pass it on to Turner.
That'd be great. Yeah, thanks.
Maybe it's a good idea to get a couple of them.
I think so. What do you think?
2, 3.
If we can control for the front end, that would be the best. But
Okay.
it'd be nice to have a couple of those.
Yeah, the dimming function is external to the front end.
Oh, it is?
It's just it's just daylight harvesting from those photocells located in the daylight zone.
When we adjust that dimming, is it just until the next day when it starts daylight harvesting again? Or
No,
can you get it?
it's actually a set program, so once you dim it and then you go and hit automatic on it, it should do exactly what you asked it to do until you change it again with the remote control.
Awesome. That'll be great.
Is there any logic in there that we could set up to where it'll be like whatever light level we need to be during the day, but it might actually be able to drop down at night instead of get brighter at night?
Well, that's what's up. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. There's a night setting, there's a day setting, and then there's an automatic. So once you've set the night levels and the day levels, you hit the automatic
Okay,
button
perfect.
and it will do exactly what you've just asked it to do.
Nice.
Great, that's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Check out the.
All right, it's in here.
I'll go grab that thing.
Thanks.
So ultimately, this should be connected to the internet so that your property management can monitor it remotely. But at the moment, it's just set up standalone. And I've got a little access port, or access point plugged into the network jack, just so I can browse into it without having to run a cable and other trip hazards across the room. I do have just current IP settings and password information on a little posted here for anybody who needs to access that in the meantime. So the Lockstopper program, or the device here, is what we call a segment manager. It's a MSTP segment, network segment, so that's where the segment name comes from. And I basically just want to browse to the IP address of the segment manager using any web browser. Brings me under 23 Elliott, and the credentials are also here on the posting as well. So when you first log in, it brings you into this configuration screen. To do any schedule adjustments, you come over here to this button at the top right of our dashboard, which changes us over into our monitoring screen. And then I can click on the tab here marked schedule. And it basically brings me into sort of a calendar type view. And I can see that today 3 things are going to happen. The schedule is day oriented. So what I mean by that is things like the exterior lights, the schedule portion that it's showing is the daytime portion of that operation. So the schedules here are normal hours for the interior, exterior lighting off, because that's the day mode. At night it's on, and then exterior signage off, because again, that's the day portion of the program is the off state. And each one of these can be individually altered. If I hover over the particular schedule element, I get an edit button, and then it takes me into the specific actions of that schedule, what happens at what time, and I can go in and edit those things as necessary.
So is it just hard times during the day, or can you set it up to like sunrise, sunset for the exterior?
So if I brought us into the interior schedule, which you'll see is scheduled at specific times,
Sure.
8 a.m., 6 p.m. I'm going to cancel out of here and go into one of the others. And you'll notice that the edges of these don't quite line up. Here at the top of the screen, it tells me what sunrise and sunset are today. And if I come down and edit this, you'll see it says when time is astronomical sunset, minus 30 minutes, turn lights on. When astronomical sunrise, plus 30 minutes, turn lights off.
Perfect.
So, depending on how much of a light canyon the front of the building is on Elliott, you may find that it needs to be more like 45 minutes or an hour versus a half an hour, but that's usually a pretty good place to start. It also is going to be depending on how much other ambient light there is, from street lamps and other things, in terms of how early you want those lights to turn on.
Is this auto adjust for daylight savings time?
Yes.
Do we as building operators need to keep any licensing fees or anything in mind if we get our own little laptop to plug in?
Nope, it's strictly a web browser. Everything that, all the licensing is on the unit and is, does not expire.
There's no annual licensing fee?
If there's the desire to tie it into BACnet, this is very, very BACnet friendly.
Okay.
So you can do BACnet over IP if you want to put it onto a common building network with your HVAC and access control or anything else. Again, it isn't set up for that at the moment because we're not connected to a network, but if in the future, if that becomes a desired thing, then yeah, we can export a BACnet points list and say here are the things that you can control or monitor.
Can you see the different circuits on here? Are they labeled? You control them?
You can, if I come back into configure, that actually lets me look at the whole system on a hardware level. And then I click over to devices, network.
Are there any usernames, passwords that we need?
Everything's on a little post-it here in the box.
I wrote it down, you got a recording of it.
And if the post-it gets lost, it is currently at our default IP setting, so if that post-it disappears, it isn't exotic or special to this site at the moment. It's in our default, so it's easy enough for somebody to tell you what they are. The password is specific to the project. However, we're until you assign it to something unique to your organization, we use a default pattern, which is your initial login is admin, and the password is capital S, lowercase n, £, and the serial number of the segment manager, which is under this cover.
Okay.
So SN # 801-68223. So here, once I come down through this tree, I can see all of the devices in the space, including what their settings are. In the loads, again,
No description on them yet.
in the loads have the descriptions in. So again, we're only the ones that actually have loads currently wired to them have been identified. So our general lighting on levels 5, 6, and 7, L5, L6, L7. We're currently looking at this particular, looking at the 7th floor panel, which only has the L7 general lighting and the chandelier. There's only 2 relays in use up there. In here, we're just using 4, L5, L6, exterior, and signage.
And how many relays are in there?
24 per floor. Or excuse me, 24 in this panel, 24 in this panel. There are only the 2 panels. There's not a dedicated panel for 5. It's shared out of 6. Yeah, from here I can turn individual loads on and off. If I do a manual override here and turn a load off, it will automatically rejoin the rest of the building program the next timed event that applies to that load. So currently it's on. If I turned it off, it would remain off until end of day. And then the next time the occupancy sensor picked it up after hours, it would turn on again.
How do we choose which schedule each one is following? Because I know at some point we'll be having probably new schedules for things and whatnot.
Sure. At the moment, as that stuff gets wired, there will be additional programming done to accommodate those spaces, and we'll create the new network groups. At the moment, there are 3 control groups: interior, exterior, and signage.
But is there a way on each one of these that shows what schedule it's following? Like if you click on like what you're on right now, this load, does it show what schedule it's following?
No, I can't sort of back see it through the load,
Okay.
but I can look at the schedule and see what group the schedule controls. Then I can look at the group and it'll tell me what the members of the group are.
Okay.
But no, there isn't a way to basically say, hey, this element is a member of the following logical structure. There isn't that sort of reverse lookup capability. Makes sense? It's pretty basic stuff at the moment because we're doing so little with the lighting.
And so we can either plug this just into a network switch or directly into, if we're gonna have a computer. Most likely just be a
I've got it.
network switch.
I know sometimes I plug into these directly with my network adapter. Sometimes if I'm roaming around and checking things, I go wireless like I have right now.
And then this, oh no, that's just web browser. Okay, yeah, cool. That's all I
The other
need.
thing is, there are 2 network ports on this. The one that is basically for connection to building systems is the primary port. The secondary port is there for if we need to access the system while it's connected to the building network, so that we can work in our own IP range.
So you can just plug into it.
Cool. So yeah, it does it. FIP is the primary. And you can just be aware that there are 2.
And it's labeled on the primary.
Primary, secondary.
Cool. Sounds good, thank you.
You're welcome. Are you two really the people who need to know that any of the rest of the group, should they be shown this or should they not be shown this?
They're probably not that interested in this
Okay.
one, yeah.
All of the occupancy sensors are individually programmable. It's not like there's a classification of settings that gets broadcast to all of them. So, for instance, down on level 5, there are sensors in that passageway right alongside the garage entrance. There's a lot of air movement in there, and it's a very cold environment, very drafty, so I've reduced the ultrasonic settings in that space because it was false triggering a lot from air movement.
So like just take a little bit longer, some of those are before they take on.
Generally, if you've got a door near a sensor, the ultrasonics will pick up the door opening because that's such a big change in the reflectivity of the space.
So you said it has to trigger ultrasonic and infrared in order to do it.
Yes. Maybe telling you things you already know, but the PIR side of a sensor, basically I consider it to be something like an upside down sea urchin with all the spines. And what it's looking for is heat moving from one spine to another. So because those spines get farther apart the farther you are from the sensor, the amount of distance you have to travel for it to see you is greater the farther you are from the sensor.
Yeah.
So when a sensor is very, very close to you, you don't have to move very far. However, it's more likely to see you if you're moving across the spines than if you're moving toward the sensor. However, you'll find that in many cases they are just outside of a doorway. And the idea there is that you're so close to the sensor that you don't have to move very far at all for it to see you.
Okay.
Is that PIR setting adjustable
Yes, it is.
with the remote?
Yes.
And we'll get manuals and everything for all this, so.
Yeah, that was my other question.
I'll read
We
all
do
that
have some
later.
papers on that.
All the sensors are the same type. They have been, everything in the restroom is at basically our standard sensitivity settings, 20-minute timeout. Everything in the open floor areas is set for a 30-minute timeout just because it's such a big space, and if you're showing it to potential tenants, then you don't want the lights turning out on you.
The bathrooms are off only.
Switches are
Are we
on.
ready
only.
to switch over?
Yeah.
We're gonna go on to fire.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
good, we're just
Yeah.
chatting.
Sorry, quick.
We're just chatting, we're good.
No, okay, that's